Brian sat alone in the cockpit of his starship, the Odyssey, staring into the endless darkness of space. Outside the reinforced glass canopy, stars shimmered coldly pinpricks of light scattered across the void, distant and indifferent. His pale hands rested lightly on the controls, fingers twitching with nervous energy. But his mind drifted far from the sterile panels and humming engines. The vast loneliness of deep space was a weight pressing on his chest, thicker than the vacuum that enveloped him. He'd traveled farther than most dared, charting forgotten star systems on a mission that had lost its purpose somewhere between the red glow of dying suns and the icy trails of comets. Years of solitude had taught him that in the void, the silence was not peaceful. It was a vast, living thing that echoed back every thought, every regret. Ryan's jaw tightened as he brushed a lock of sun-bleached hair from his forehead. Memories flickered behind his pale blue eyes, faces of friends left behind, the ache of promises broken, the emptiness of hope deferred. Space had been his refuge, but now it felt like a cage. Suddenly, alarms blared, cutting through the stillness. Like a scream, red lights flashed across the control panel, warning of critical system failures. Brian's body tensed instantly, muscles coiling like a spring ready to release. "Not now," he muttered, fingers dancing over the emergency protocols. The Odyssey shuddered violently as engines sputtered, the hum of life support systems faltering. Space, his endless companion, was turning hostile. He activated the ship's sensors, eyes scanning frantic readouts. Ahead, a massive, uncharted planet loomed its surface, a swirling mosaic of blues and greens. An atmospheric anomaly was pulling him in, a gravitational trap he had not detected. The ship's trajectory spiraled uncontrollably. Ryan clenched his teeth. "Brace for impact," he whispered. The Odyssey plunged toward the planet's surface like a shooting star fallen from grace. The air inside the cockpit thickened with tension. Metal groaned under stress as heat flared against the hull. The stars outside blurred into streaks of light. Then darkness swallowed everything. When he opened his eyes, pain blossomed in his shoulder and a faint ringing filled his ears. The cockpit was fractured, glass shattered in jagged webs around him. Smoke curled lazily, acrid and thick. Outside, dense forests stretched as far as he could see, strange red-leaved trees that swayed under an alien breeze. Brian forced himself upright, limbs heavy but moving. The emergency beacon was offline. Communication with the fleet was lost. He was alone. The air tasted different here, thick, rich with unfamiliar scents. Earth and something wild, primal. His heart hammered not just from injury, but from raw, untamed fear. Grimacing, Brian unlatched his harness and stepped out into the alien world. The ground beneath his boots was soft, the soil springy like moss, but tinged with faint warmth. The sky above was an endless expanse of swirling, lavender clouds and two suns hanging low on the horizon. He scanned the surroundings, every muscle alert. This was not just a crash site. It was a place untouched by human hands, alive in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. As he trekked through the dense undergrowth, the silence pressed in again. No chirping insects, no rustle of small creatures, only the steady whisper of wind through crimson leaves. Hours passed, and exhaustion gnawed at him, but something deeper pulled Brian forward, a flicker of hope, a spark that maybe this strange planet held more than just danger. Then, as twilight settled, a sudden movement caught his eye. In the shadows between towering trees, he glimpsed a figure graceful, lithe, with fiery red hair cascading over shoulders that shimmered with an unnatural glow. Her eyes, sharp and golden like a fox's, met his with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Brian froze. The loneliness of space had been broken. He took a careful step forward, heart pounding in rhythm with the alien world's pulse. "Hello," he said softly, The figure tilted her head, lips curving into a small, enigmatic smile. And in that moment, beneath alien stars and whispered secrets, two souls from different worlds began a journey neither could have imagined. Brian's breath caught in his throat as the figure emerged fully from the shadows, stepping gracefully into the fading twilight. Her presence was almost ethereal, framed by the crimson canopy of towering trees that stretched endlessly above them. The air was thick with the scent of unfamiliar blossoms and damp earth, a rich symphony of life starkly contrasting the cold. Void Brian had just escaped. She was unlike anyone Brian had ever seen. Her skin bore a subtle coppery glow that shimmered faintly beneath the crimson hues of the setting sun. Strands of fiery red hair cascaded down her back, catching the last light and setting her almost ablaze. But it was her eyes that held him captive, golden, sharp, and intelligent, with an uncanny fox-like gleam that suggested both wildness and wisdom. Subtle pointed ears peeked from beneath her hair, and the soft rustle of a tail brushed the undergrowth. Behind her. Brian swallowed hard, feeling the weight of their gazes locked across the thinning distance. "I'm Brian," he said carefully, voice steady but laced with exhaustion and hope. The woman's lips curved into a faint, almost hesitant smile. "Sophie," she replied softly, her voice a melodic whisper that seemed to blend naturally. With the forest's breath, time seemed to slow, the silent world around them holding its breath. Though their worlds were galaxies apart, Brian from the cold solitude of space, Sophie from the warm pulse of her planet, an unspoken understanding bridged the distance. Brian lowered his gaze respectfully, then gestured toward his battered ship. "My ship, it's damaged. I don't know if I can get it working again." Sophie's eyes softened with sympathy. "This world has its own rhythms," she said, stepping closer. "Perhaps I can help. Come, you must rest. The forest is kind, but the night holds dangers." He hesitated, pride warring with necessity. Yet the kindness in her voice, the sincerity in her gaze, pushed him to follow. Together, they moved deeper into the forest, the twilight thickening around them like a velvet curtain. The path was narrow and winding, flanked by towering trees whose bark shimmered faintly under Sophie's touch, revealing veins of light pulsing. Beneath, strange flowers bloomed in bursts of iridescent colors, and creatures with luminescent eyes watched quietly from the shadows, curious but cautious. Ryan's steps grew lighter, comforted by Sophie's confident stride and the subtle energy that seemed to emanate from her very being. As they walked, Sophie spoke softly of her world, Emberia, a planet shaped by fire and life, where every living thing was connected by an unseen web of energy that flowed beneath the surface like a heartbeat. She told of her people, guardians of the forest who lived in harmony with the land, their bodies and spirits intertwined with nature. Brian listened, fascinated by the harmony and mystery woven through her words. "Why did you come here alone?" Sophie asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Brian's gaze drifted upward, toward the swirling violet clouds above. "I was searching for something," he admitted quietly. "Maybe escape, maybe hope. Space is beautiful, but also cruelly empty." Sophie's golden eyes met his again, filled with understanding. "You are not alone anymore," she said simply. "Here, you can find more than survival. You can find belonging." They reached a clearing where a small spring shimmered beneath the moonlight, water so clear it mirrored the twin moons hanging low in the sky. Sophie knelt by the water's edge, cupping her hands to drink, and Brian joined her, the coolness refreshing against his sunburnt lips. As night deepened, they built a small shelter from fallen branches and woven leaves, a humble refuge beneath the watchful stars. Sophie moved with practiced grace, her every action a dance of care and connection. With the natural world, Brian sat quietly, watching her silhouette against the flickering firelight. Despite the alien surroundings, a strange warmth settled within him, a flicker of hope that perhaps this unknown world was not the end of his journey, but the beginning of something new. The forest around them pulsed softly with life, a constant reminder that even in the vast unknown, connection could be found between worlds, between souls. And under the twin moons of Emberia, two strangers from distant stars took their first steps toward a shared destiny. The morning light seeped gently through the thick canopy above, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor as Brian stirred from restless sleep. His body ached from the crash and the rough night spent beneath alien stars, but an unfamiliar sensation tugged at his chest, a cautious hope, fragile yet persistent. Sophie was already awake, moving silently among the trees, her red hair glowing faintly in the dawn. She seemed to embody the forest itself, fluid, untamed, yet perfectly in harmony with her surroundings. As Brian watched her, he realized how little he truly understood this place, or the woman who had become his unexpected guide. He rose and stretched, the cool morning air brushing against his sunburned skin. Stepping outside their shelter, he noticed the subtle signs of life all around, tiny creatures scurrying beneath fallen leaves, delicate flowers opening to the sun's warmth, and the faint, melodious hum of the forest's heartbeat, a rhythm Sophie had spoken of. "Sophie," Brian called softly. She turned, her golden eyes meeting his with warmth and curiosity. "Good morning, Brian," she replied, her voice as soft as the breeze. He hesitated, then ventured, "I want to understand this place. And you, how did you come to live here? Why do you protect this forest?" Sophie's gaze drifted toward the towering trees, shadows flickering in her eyes. "This forest is my home, my sanctuary. It is alive in ways that humans can barely imagine. Every leaf, every stream, every creature is connected by an ancient energy, the pulse of Emberia." She stepped closer, her fingers brushing against the bark of a nearby tree. "My people are bound to this land. We are its guardians, shaped by the fire and life that pulse beneath the surface. We protect it from those who would harm it, from outsiders who do not understand." Brian nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "And what about me? A stranger from the stars?" Sophie smiled, a hint of amusement softening her features. "You carry the cold of space in your eyes, but also a warmth I did not expect. Perhaps you are meant to be part of this world, even if only for a time." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden rustling nearby. Both instinctively turned toward the sound, tension rising like an electric charge in the air. From the underbrush emerged a creature, small, agile, with reddish fur and intelligent eyes that reflected the same golden glow as Sophie's. It watched them warily before darting off into the forest. Sophie's smile deepened. "The forest watches us. It tests the newcomers." Brian laughed softly, the sound breaking through the lingering shadows of doubt. "Then I guess I still have a lot to learn." They spent the day exploring the forest together. Sophie showed him hidden groves where bioluminescent plants glowed softly, even in daylight, and clear streams where the water tasted of minerals and life. She taught him to listen to the subtle whispers of the trees and to feel the rhythm of the land beneath his feet. Brian, in turn, shared stories of his travels among the stars, of distant worlds bathed in light and shadow, of the loneliness that came with endless space, and of the hope that had driven him onward as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. They returned to their shelter. The bond between them, forged through shared stories and silent understanding, had grown stronger. Sophie looked at Brian, her eyes reflecting the first stars of night. "You are different, Brian, not just in body, but in spirit." He met her gaze, feeling a connection that transcended words. "And you've given me something I thought I lost, hope." Under the watchful eyes of twin moons, the soldier from the stars and the guardian of the forest sat together, their worlds entwined by a thread of trust and the promise of something more. Asterisk, the night deepened over the forested world, wrapping Brian and Sophie in a cocoon of shadow and starlight. A small fire crackled between them, its warm glow casting flickering light across their faces, painting Sophie's coppery skin with golden hues and illuminating the pale determination etched into Brian's features. The air was thick with the sense of wood smoke and the faint, sweet fragrance of alien blossoms that lingered on the breeze. Somewhere beyond the firelight, the forest murmured a gentle symphony of rustling leaves, distant calls, and the steady heartbeat Sophie had described, the pulse of Emberia itself. Brian traced a finger absent-mindedly along a smooth stone by the fire. "It's strange," he began quietly, "how I've traveled so far through endless space, but it's this place, these moments, that feel the most alive." Sophie watched him, her golden eyes reflecting the flames. "Life is more than stars and ships," she said softly. "It's connection, understanding. Even in the vast silence of the cosmos, we seek to belong." He nodded, the weight of his loneliness surfacing beneath his calm exterior. "Out there," he gestured vaguely toward the sky beyond the canopy, "there is only distance. Time and space stretch endlessly, and people become nothing but echoes." Sophie's gaze softened. "Here we remember. The trees, the earth, they hold stories. They carry the memories of those who came before. And they watch over those who remain." For a moment, they sat in silence, the fire crackling between them, bridging the gulf of their different worlds. And Brian spoke again, his voice lower, more intimate. "Tell me about you, Sophie. Not just this place or your people, but you. What brought you here? What do you dream of?" Sophie's eyes flickered with a trace of vulnerability. "I was born under the red skies of Emberia, raised among the guardians of the forest. I learned to listen to the land, to protect its secrets. But sometimes I wonder what lies beyond these trees. Is there a world where I could be more than a guardian? Where I could simply be?" Brian leaned forward, the firelight dancing in his pale eyes. "I understand that feeling. Out there, I was a soldier, a navigator, someone always moving forward, always searching. But what I really craved was a place to rest, to find meaning beyond the mission." Sophie smiled gently. "Perhaps, then, our meeting was not chance. Two wanderers seeking the same thing in different ways." He reached out, tentatively brushing a stray lock of her glowing red hair behind her ear. "You're unlike anyone I've ever met. You make me believe in something I thought was lost." Her breath caught, eyes shimmering. "And you remind me that there is more beyond the trees, beyond the pulse of this land." As the fire waned, they shared stories. Brian, recounting the endless stars, the cold beauty of nebulae, the hum of his ship's engines as it sliced through the void. Sophie spoke of Emberia's ancient rituals, the sacred bond between her people and the forest, the whispered legends of a power that could bind worlds together. Their voices wove a tapestry of past and present, human and alien, hope and longing. When the embers glowed faintly, Brian finally spoke. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'm grateful for this night." "For you." Sophie's smile was a promise, soft and radiant. "So am I, Brian, so am I." Under the twin moons and the endless stars beyond, two souls, so different, yet so alike, found a fragile sanctuary in each other's presence, beginning a journey that would transcend worlds and challenge the very fabric of fate. The dawn broke over Emberia with a suddenness that startled Brian from his sleep. Pale light filtered through the crimson canopy, casting long shadows over the forest floor. The cool morning air was heavy with moisture, a promise of storms yet to come. Sophie was already awake, tending to the small fire from the night before, her movements fluid and practiced. A dance of survival woven into every gesture. Brian rose stiffly, every muscle protesting the lingering aches of his crash, landing a harsh reminder of his vulnerability. He watched Sophie for a moment, how she seemed utterly at home in this alien wilderness, and felt a pang of awe mixed with envy. Here, in the vast unknown, she was a creature of instinct and grace. He, by contrast, was a stranger fighting against nature itself. Their day began with the urgent task of repairing the Odyssey. The ship lay a short walk away, its hull battered and scorched, panels hanging loose, circuitry sparking faintly in the dim light. Brian's fingers trembled slightly as he pulled tools from his pack, the technology as familiar to him as his own skin, yet daunting amidst the wild chaos surrounding him. Sophie knelt beside him, her golden eyes scanning the damaged vessel with quiet intensity. "The ship is old," she observed, "but it carries a strong spirit, much like you." Brian chuckled, despite the tension. "I'm glad something here reminds me of home." Hours passed in a blur of sweat and frustration. Every repair felt like a battle against time and the planet's unpredictable temperament. As he worked, Brian couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching from the shadows, silent observers in a forest alive with secrets. The sky darkened abruptly, a rolling thunder growling in the distance. Sophie looked up, tension sharpening her features. "A storm is coming," she warned. "We must find shelter." Brian nodded, reluctantly leaving the ship in her capable hands. Together, they ventured deeper into the forest, the first drops of rain stinging their skin like cold needles. Branches twisted overhead, shielding them partially as the storm unleashed its fury winds, howling like ancient spirits. Rain pouring in relentless sheets. In the heart of the tempest, Sophie found a cavern nestled between jagged rocks, a natural refuge. Inside, the air was cool and still, a sanctuary carved by time itself. The flickering glow of bioluminescent fungi cast eerie shadows, turning the walls into a canvas of dancing light. Brian shivered, the cold seeping into his bones. Sophie moved to his side, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "This land tests those who enter," she murmured. "But it also teaches." They huddled together as the storm raged beyond the cavern's mouth, a sound a deafening roar against the fragile shelter. In that closeness, the distance between two worlds felt impossibly small. Brian's heart beat in sync with Sophie's. Steady rhythm, a tether anchoring him in this wild place. When the storm finally abated, they emerged into a transformed world. The forest glistened with fresh rain, leaves dripping with liquid crystals that caught the light like scattered stars. The scent of wet earth and blooming flowers filled the air, vibrant and alive. But danger was not yet done with him. As they navigated back toward the Odyssey, a low growl echoed from the underbrush. Brian's hand instinctively went to the sidearm at his hip, eyes scanning the dense foliage. Emerging from the shadows was a creature unlike any he'd seen, sleek and muscular, with dark fur mottled in shades of emerald and obsidian, eyes glowing with predatory intelligence. Sophie stepped forward, calm but alert. "This is a guardian of the forest," she explained. "It watches over the balance. We must not threaten it." The creature's gaze locked with Brian's, a silent communication passing between man and beast. Slowly, the tension eased, and the guardian retreated, disappearing into the undergrowth. Brian exhaled, the adrenaline ebbing from his veins. "Your world is more alive than I imagined," he said. Sophie smiled, her eyes reflecting both pride and sorrow. "And it demands respect. Here, survival is a partnership with the land, with each other." That night, as they returned to their fire beneath the stars, Brian felt a deepening respect, not just for Sophie's world, but for the woman who navigated with such fierce grace. The trials they faced were harsh, but each challenge forged a bond stronger than any starship's hull. In the heart of Emberia, amid storms and shadows, two souls learned that survival was not merely enduring, it was embracing the unknown. Together, asterisk days bled seamlessly into one another under Emberia's endless canopy, the rhythm of the planet weaving itself into Brian's very bones. The ache of his initial crash had dulled, replaced by a raw, vital awareness that pulsed in tandem with Sophie's presence. The strange crimson world no longer felt quite so alien, and neither did the woman who had become his guide, his companion in this uncharted wilderness. Morning light filtered through the rustling leaves as Brian emerged from their makeshift shelter, the familiar scent of damp earth and flowering vines filling his lungs. Sophie was already waiting by the edge of a crystalline stream, her copper skin shimmering as sunlight danced on the water's surface. Her golden eyes caught his gaze, and a soft smile warmed the space between them. "Today, I want to show you something," Sophie said, her voice a melody blending effortlessly with the forest's hum. "A place where the pulse of Emberia is strongest." Intrigued, Brian followed, the crunch of fallen leaves muffled beneath their careful steps. Forest grew denser, the air thick with energy that seemed to hum beneath their skin. As they walked, Sophie spoke quietly of the land's ancient magic, the invisible threads connecting every living thing, a web of life that had endured for millennia. Brian listened, fascinated by how her world and his own, though separated by light years, shared echoes of connection and survival. Finally, they arrived at a hidden grove bathed in an otherworldly glow. Towering trees encircled a crystalline pool, its water shimmering with iridescent colors that shifted with every ripple. Sophie knelt beside the pool, placing her hands gently on the surface. The water responded, glowing brighter, casting fractals of light dancing on their faces. "This is the heart of Emberia," she explained. "The pulse flows strongest here. It is the source of life, and the bond we share with this world." Brian reached out tentatively, touching the water. A warmth spread through his fingers, seeping deep into his veins. For a moment, the distant ache of loneliness was replaced by a fierce surge of belonging. As they sat side by side, Sophie turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You carry much with you, Brian, the cold silence of space, the weight of solitude. But here, you are not alone." He met her gaze, the raw honesty in his voice catching in the quiet grove. "I never believed I'd find this connection, purpose outside the stars." Their hands brushed, fingers intertwining naturally as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in fiery hues. The silence between them was no longer empty, but charged with the unspoken promise of trust and understanding. Over the following days, their bond deepened not through grand declarations, but quiet moments, sharing meals of wild fruits and fresh water, exchanging stories beneath the endless sky, learning to move as one through the tangled wilderness. Brian taught Sophie about the stars, mapping constellations she had never seen, while she revealed the secrets of the forest, the patterns of the plants, the songs of the wind, the sacred rituals that honored the pulse. Together, they rebuilt parts of the Odyssey, their hands working. Side by side, a blend of human technology and Emberian ingenuity. Sophie's delicate touch coaxed life from fragile circuits, while Brian's steady hands wielded tools with practiced precision. Each repaired panel, each restored system, was a testament to their growing partnership, a melding of two worlds and two hearts. One evening, as twilight wrapped the forest in a violet haze, they stood atop a ridge overlooking the vast expanse of Emberia. The twin moons rose slowly, casting pale light over endless trees and shimmering rivers. Sophie leaned into Brian's side, her voice a whisper carried by the gentle breeze. "Whatever happens, this moment is ours." Brian tightened his arm around her shoulders, the fierce resolve in his chest tempered by a newfound tenderness. And I won't let go. Beneath alien stars and ancient trees, the soldier from the void and the guardian of Emberia found strength not just in survival, but in the fragile, enduring power of connection. The signal came at dawn, a faint, pulsating beacon rippling through the static silence of Brian's makeshift communication device. Its sudden arrival shattered the fragile bubble of peace he and Sophie had woven around themselves, a stark reminder of the world he'd left behind. Brian stared at the blinking light, heart pounding in a rhythm that matched the ancient pulse of Emberia's forest. The message was brief but unmistakable. Rescue was possible. The fleet had detected his emergency beacon and was mobilizing a retrieval mission. Sophie's eyes met his, deep pools of golden light reflecting a storm of emotions, hope, fear, and something more fragile, uncertainty. "It's time," Brian said quietly, the weight of the choice settling heavily on his shoulders. Sophie nodded, though her breath hitched slightly. "You came from the stars, Brian. Your place may still be out there." He shook his head, conflicted. "But this world? You? I never imagined I'd find something like this in the vast cold of space." They walked together beneath the towering, crimson trees, the forest whispering around them as if holding its breath. Brian's mind raced with questions. Returning meant safety, a chance to reconnect with humanity, to fulfill the mission he'd once believed defined him. Yet staying meant embracing the unknown, forging a new life alongside Sophie and the wild heartbeat of Emberia. That evening, they sat by the glowing pool at the heart of the forest, the pulse shimmering beneath the water's surface like a living thing. Sophie took his hand, her touch steady and warm. "Whatever you choose, Brian, know that this place and I will be here. But the forest is not just a refuge. It is a responsibility." Brian's gaze lingered on the water's iridescence, feeling the deep connection it symbolized. "I don't know what the future holds," he admitted, voice low. "But I know that I don't want to leave without you." Her smile was bittersweet. "And I fear what it means to let someone from your world in." He squeezed her hand gently. "Sometimes the greatest journey is learning to belong somewhere new." The nights that followed were heavy with silence and unspoken fears. Brian repaired his ship with renewed urgency. Every bolt tightened, a painful reminder of the decision ahead. On the eve of the fleet's arrival, Sophie led Brian to the ridge overlooking the endless canopy, the twin moons casting pale light over the alien landscape. "I don't know what tomorrow will bring," she whispered. "But tonight we are here, together." Brian pulled her close, the world narrowing to the steady beat of two hearts, entwined beneath unfamiliar stars. When the first rescue ships appeared on the horizon, a brilliant flare of engines piercing the dark sky, Brian stood at the edge of choice, torn between the life he knew and the new home he had found. In that moment, the soldier and the guardian understood that some decisions carry no easy answers, only the courage to face whatever comes next. The morning dawned soft and golden over Emberia, the twin suns casting long shadows across the forest's vibrant canopy. Brian stood at the edge of the clearing, the hum of the approaching rescue fleet growing louder in his ears. The Odyssey, though battered and patched, gleamed faintly in the early light, ready to carry him back to the cold void of space, back to the world he'd once known. But his heart hesitated. Beside him, Sophie's presence was a steady warmth against the chill of uncertainty. Her golden eyes held a quiet strength, and the subtle rustle of her tail brushed gently against his leg, delicate reminder of the wild world they'd come to share. The fleet's ships glided over the treetops, sleek vessels of polished metal, and roaring engines, starkly contrasting the living, breathing forest below. Brian's communicator buzzed with incoming messages, commands, logistics, promises of safety, yet none of that mattered. He looked down at Sophie's hand in his, Small, fragile anchor in a sea of endless possibility. Are you ready? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Brian inhaled deeply, the scent of Emberia filling his lungs. Wildflowers, damp earth, and the unyielding pulse of life itself. No, he said simply, not yet. Together, they turned away from the distant hum of metal and engines, stepping deeper into the forest's embrace. The trees seemed to lean closer, their ancient boughs weaving a tapestry of shadow and light, sheltering two souls who had found something neither expected. Sophie led him to the heart of the grove. The crystalline pool where the pulse of Emberia flowed strongest. The water shimmered with iridescent colors, alive and vibrant as it had been the day they first touched it. Brian knelt, trailing his fingers through the cool surface. A surge of warmth flooded his veins, a connection deeper than any star chart or signal could offer. He looked up at Sophie, the decision settling in his eyes. This is where I belong, he said. Not out there in the void, but here with you, with this world. Sophie smiled, a radiant light in the twilight. Then we build a future together. The forest around them seemed to exhale, the pulse growing louder, a living heartbeat that thrummed beneath their feet. In the days that followed, Brian and Sophie worked side by side, blending technology and nature, human ingenuity and Emberian wisdom. They crafted a home not of steel and circuits, but of living wood and light, a sanctuary where both worlds could intertwine. News from the fleet came and went, but Brian no longer felt the pull of distant stars. His mission had changed from survival to belonging, from wandering to homecoming. Under the twin moons, with Sophie's hand clasped tightly in his, Brian faced the horizon, a horizon, not of endless darkness, but of new beginnings. Together, they stepped forward into the unknown, not as solitary wanderers, but as partners bound by a promise as ancient and enduring as the forest itself.